Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Slime Files, where we look at all of the stuff that I forgot to document throughout the years. Today we're going to be working with some witches. Now, this is one of those things that I actually have no idea if somebody else has already found it, but I haven't really seen anybody using it, so I'm just going to go ahead and document it anyways. Now, as you may know, witches like to throw potions at mobs in order to attack, but on Bedrock, they actually attack iron golems on sight. Little side note, they do often need to be able to pathfind to it for some reason, or at least to the same XZ position. Well, as it turns out, if we have a 5 block vertical gap here between the witch and the iron golem, the witch will actually miss every single shot. They just can't seem to throw that high for some reason. And you can actually bring the iron golem even higher if you wanted, but this works. If you wanted to, you could also use 2 blocks of water in order to stop all of the momentum, or you can also do both of these at the same time. And of course, depending on how you use the water, or not use it so that the potion just goes off in that direction, or even just use a bubble column, you can actually control the shot very well and hit from just about any angle. Now, there are actually 4 potions that you can get a witch to throw, that being weakness, slowness, poison, and harming, or instant damage. The first 2 aren't particularly interesting. Weakness you might be able to use for villagers, but it's a lot easier to just use tipped arrows wherever they are. I'm really glad that they changed the colors. I can actually tell which one's which now. Thank you, Mojang. Anyways, so weakness and slowness is slowness. Anyways, poison. It's probably pretty obvious how poison can be used. You could use this for a mob softener that guarantees that the mobs always get down to 1 health. However, the most interesting one, at least in my opinion, would have to be harming, as it gives us what I call the splash killer. I just thought the name was really funny, so I went with it. Now, of course, at first, this may seem like it's just some really novelty kind of mob grinder. However, so here I have something to multiply the creepers by 256, and then give them some damage to speed this whole process up, because it slows down the game a little when there's that many. Anyways, if we do that the normal way, you'll see we got quite a bit here. We got 4.5 stacks. That's quite a bit for not having looting. But that's the really cool part. You see, first off, you can dispense a sword onto the witch. And now, if we go ahead and do it, what we'll find is the looting got applied. That was looting 3. Now at this point you're probably wondering, don't we already have trident killers for automatic looting? And I mean, yeah, trident killers work pretty well. However, they have their own fair share of problems, some of which are actually addressed by splash killers. Probably the biggest problem with trident killers is that for them to actually give looting, you need whoever threw the trident to actually be online and holding a looting sword, which means if they go offline, now you have to go and rethrow a bunch of tridents, and even if you're the one who threw it, now you can't be doing other stuff unless you're holding a looting sword the entire time. Meanwhile, well, splash killers are pretty straightforward. If you give them a looting sword, they provide looting 24/7. The other problem with trident killers is, as you can tell, the mob has to be in a very specific position in order for it to actually take damage. Meanwhile, splash killers are way more generous about where the mob can be, and they can hit up to 3 blocks away. Of course, in this case, the mob is only taking a single hit point of damage each hit, but, I mean, even just if we dropped them all into this 3x3 hit pit, they all die very quickly. A couple of other things to note: if you've ever worked with trident killers, you probably know that they don't fare well with minecarts, which is a big problem because you have to get them up in a very specific position. But even with splash killers being more generous about their location, they actually just don't affect the minecarts at all, even if it's a direct hit. And of course, there's also the detail about trident killers have to be turned on and off, which means you actually have to remember to turn it off before you leave. Whereas with splash killers, if you accidentally leave them running, nothing bad happens. Well, unless they're throwing it into an unloaded chunk, in which case you're going to have a lot of lag once you load up that chunk again. But yeah, of course, splash killers do have their own fair share of problems. The most notable one being, you need to get a witch. It's a witch. Yeah. Anyways, the other big problem is if the witch ever drinks a potion, it will delete the sword, which is really bad. Also, there's just the big fact that because it's not a player kill, that actually complicates things a lot. For example, you can't get experience out of it, and you can't get player drops. But also, maybe sometimes that's a good thing. And the other big problem is they're quite restricted on which mobs they work with. Here are all of the mobs that they just simply don't work. And which is not off to a great start, because this is what it looks like for trident killers. Anyways, so here we have all of the undead mobs, because they just aren't hurt by harming potions. You also have raid farms, because you need it to be a player kill. Blaze farms, because you need it to be a player kill. Guardians, because the thorns will delete the sword. And you probably want the experience, in which case it needs to be a player kill. And witches themselves, which is kind of ironic, but this is because they have a lot of magic defense and can regenerate too quickly, so a single witch splash killer cannot defeat a witch. As for the mobs that they can kill, and that you can apply looting to, we have a bunch of mobs that you could farm them, but there's not really any point, including ones that would be useful and peaceful. If you could get yourself a witch. Then we have a bunch of passive mobs, a couple more passive mobs, and some moist passive mobs. But then for the hostile mobs, well, this is a pretty small subset. In this chest, these are the only ones that aren't really worth killing, so... But while it may be a small subset, we do have spiders. Of course, you won't get spider eyes. Creepers, hoglins, and ghasts. But then we have the mobs where it actually potentially offers an advantage. First, we have the magma cubes, because the splash potions do AoE damage, which makes quick work of the little guys, which also applies to me. I'm just gonna put this over here. Moving on, we also have all of the mob where trident killers don't work. And then, of course, shulkers. Now, I'm not actually too familiar with shulker farming on Bedrock, so I don't actually know if you can use a trident or splash killer for shulkers, but they do work out a little better. That first off, you can completely enclose them into an area, and thus stopping them from getting their shulker bullets out, and then you can hit them through the wall. The other thing is, as you just saw, their defense, which is normally really good at blocking damage, actually doesn't do anything with magic. The other fun thing about witches is, of course, if one isn't enough, you can always add more and just stagger out their attacks. Here we have what I call the sexasplasher, which the name is not up for debate. But the idea here is a witch throws its potion every 3 seconds, so if we have 6 of them, we can get it to attack every half a second. However, the reality is that with this design, if you listen closely to the rhythm, you'll notice that they're not exactly hitting in perfect rhythm, which means some are hitting sooner than others, which means, because we're trying to do it every half a second, it's not going to work. Of course, if you went down to 4, it would probably be a lot easier. So I forgot to mention this, but yeah, so in order to do poison or harming, we go about 5 blocks away. I think you can go a little closer, but 5 works pretty well. And that'll put the Iron Golem in range for poison and harming, and not weakness. And then if you want it to be harming instead of poison, you just have to weaken the Iron Golem down to low health. You can either do that with your own poison potions or just like close that fence or something, and then have the witch throw a poison potion and then open it again or something, so that you just use the witch's poison potions and then you're not the one attacking Iron Golems. And, well, that's actually it for today. It was a much shorter episode today, but I hope you enjoyed it. And until next time, happy splashing!
Thank you for making it to the end of the video. YouTube Analytics tells me that only 7.8% of the first million natural numbers are actually prime. So let's see if we can change that. If it's not too much to ask, I would also love it if you were to subscript the 2 in H2O. And until next time,